Dr. Phares joins us live at this time from Washington, D.C. Walid, how you doing tonight?
Thank you very much for having me.
It's always our pleasure. You always bring a very insightful expertise to the conversation. Dr. Phares, first of all, I am really astounded at the lack of understatement in terms of how the national media is covering this story. Now, granted, I'm not in front of the TV 24/7, but I would think this is a major story. Am I wrong on this, in your opinion?
No, not at all. I mean, this is a quasi-nuclear power which is rogue under international sanctions, opening fire in the area known as Yon-Pion, which has seen military incidents before a few weeks or a couple months after sinking a vessel, and at the same time developing missiles capability that could reach way beyond the North Pacific Basin. All that basically did not generate, as you just said, Rick, the important dimension of debate and discussion. My concern is that the people in North Korea do not really realize that the context of 21st century today is different from what was the case during the Cold War. These guys may have not been updated. That more of these waves of attacks may trigger a war on the peninsula and may trigger even more than that. My other concern, if I may just add, and then we could discuss it, is what Washington's going to do about it. That's the biggest question today.
And, that's you're right, Dr. Phares, Dr. Walid Phares, a very, very big question. Before we go there, and I do want to go there, let's come to something that maybe not as important, but it's on my mind. You heard me reference it. What is your thought on this Phantom missile off the coast of California a couple weeks ago? I'm just befuddled how it's a news story for a day or two and then disappears. And all of a sudden we have this bombing of North Korea into South Korea. Is there a connection there in your mind?
What did Stephen Emerson say? Let me ask you.
Stephen Emerson said, Rick, I don't know if there's a connection because it was such a weak firing that it would not have caught anybody's attention in Asia. If the administration really wanted to catch their attention, they would have fired something much more high profile that lasted a lot longer, that went a lot further, etc. Who am I to disagree with Steve Emerson? The reason I disagree with that, Walid, is I think this administration is more into not having high profile saber rattling. And not trying to raise the alarm, if you will. They're sensitive to what they perceive the Bush administration having done. I think, in my mind, it fits perfectly the philosophy of this administration. But that's what Steve Emerson said.
Okay, let me try my 2 cents here. I'm not the top expert on missile launching, but this is what I would project. If the United States government, even in a discreet way, wanted to send a strong message to North Korea, they would deploy 3-4 ships. We have these huge, excellent, sophisticated ships with missiles and do the war games some 600 miles off the shores of North Korea and of Japan. What I'm concerned about are 2 things. Number one is the fact that not real discussions and debates have taken place about that specific picture, and it could have been very easily dealt with by showing what was the flight at that particular time, as Fox News has asked. The gentleman in Fox News has asked Sean Hannity. But I was looking at the picture, and I had a couple experts in the field, and we looked at the gas emission. It was too big. There was a big orange light out of the tip of that smoke. Now, airliners do not have that kind of emission. So that is number one. It needs an answer. The other concern could be is that it may have been a problem, an accident. It may have been something has been fired or launched itself, or somebody launched it. And obviously, they do not want to do a big discussion of it. But these are just speculations. I am looking at the picture, listening to some of the experts I've asked questions to, and that would be my little report about it.
Now, I'm getting tweets. I got to say, we're in a 24/7 news cycle these days, as we all know. Sometimes the news all blends together. I don't recall this story I'm about to mention, Walid, but I'm getting tweets tonight. I got them last night, got them overnight, that there was also a second missile spotted off the coast of New York just 2 days after the one off the coast of California. Someone just tweeted that to us right now while we're on the air. So that, have you heard anything about that?
I didn't, but you have to look at the two ends of this rope. On the one hand, you have now more attention by many people to look at similar pictures and try to see similar patterns. So you have the collective psychological added attention on the one hand. And on the other hand, what happened today, the North Korean attacks, and take us back to Asia, against that island has basically created something which is a hyper-analysis in America. What is going on with the situation with North Korea? There are missiles being developed in Northern Korea. Are the pictures that we've seen about the so-called smoke going into the space or sky off the coast of California, the real thing, something is hidden. So you're going to have more and more stories coming. More and more stories are going to show up. Sure,
I understand. It's a very good point. All right, let's come back to the point that you raised earlier. It's the important one. You said your concern is how it is which the Obama administration deals with this incident. Go ahead, please.
Well, look, Rick, the real final question of the day after what we saw today is this. We saw and heard the administration saying we'll stand shoulder to shoulder, with the South Koreans, okay. We're going to do joint exercises. That would be the actual strategic response to the North. Fine. That's what we do usually with a rational player. Had it been the Soviet Union, China, Vietnam, even Cuba, that's what you do. And they would understand. I'm concerned that North Korea has a different logic. It has no logic at all. So if we do those war games, which we are going to do, and it reminds me really of what happened in the early 60s in the Cuban Missile Crisis, but with somebody in Pyongyang who doesn't think in the same way. Let's suppose they attack the island again. Let's suppose they broke that equation of we're not doing war games, we're just shelling in a very limited way. See, they're not going to embrace the whole front. They know what's going to happen after that, which is an all-out war, which they will lose. But what they're trying to do is basically to show that America cannot respond to low-intensity conflicts, LIC. And that would be my big question. What can and would we do in that case?
What's the buzz you're hearing? You're there in D.C. You have relationships and contacts throughout the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, the administration. What's the buzz you're hearing about how this administration is handling this?
Well, there's first the international story. Sorry.
When I said handling, I meant to say how they anticipate handling this, I should say.
Okay, number one, there's the international dimension. The North Koreans will only play below 1 inch of what would be a Chinese umbrella, meaning if they want to play it all the way and that would lead to a confrontation with the U.S. and its allies, they know the end of that story. So what they want to do is do things, these incidents, repeating these incidents, and making sure that if we want to respond in a limited way, then the Chinese will intervene at the Security Council and say, let's go back to the six-party talks. That's exactly what Pyongyang wants us to do. And going back to the six-party talk means nothing because you have China and you have other people who may not put a lot of pressure on the North Koreans. So the game is to play with us so that we, at the end of the day, will have to make a choice. Either choice B, that is to go back to doing nothing, and they can, within 6 months or 2 years, show us that they have a nuclear weapon. That would be B. A, that would do something about it. And between us, I don't know what A would be. That is still my question of the evening and of tomorrow and of next week. What is it? What are the scenarios that we have? We've seen in many spots around the world that we did not have those plans of going aggressively and solving the problem before it metastasizes and becomes a much bigger one.
Are you at all concerned or surprised, shifting gears from U.S. to South Korea, are you at all surprised at South Korea's understated response? I mean, South Korea seems to be saying that go ahead and give it to us, and we'll just we'll tuck in and try and keep our heads under cover.
Look, they can't play it otherwise unless they know what's the position of the United States.
Wow.
We have our troops, across the demilitarized zone. We have our Navy there. They are really depending on us. But at the same time, if the Northerners would actually cross the red lines multiple times, the Southerners, with or without us, we will have to respond. I mean, this is a very tricky game. And if they will respond, we are bound by a defense treaty, strategic defense treaty. And if you break that defense treaty with them, we will be breaking it across the globe. Who will be, an ally of us if we do not stand by our allies?
Absolutely.
And the North Koreans are playing that game. They are really studying what we are doing now in the initial stages of this crisis.
And so, listening to what you say, Dr. Walid Phares, is it fair to say then watching the timid response of South Korea is a reflection upon their confidence in Washington?
Yes, that's what the equation is today. Let me add one more to this menu. There could be a possibility that the North Koreans are doing this in coordination with who on the other side of the globe? I want to ask you.
On the other side
North Koreans that would be testing us to see if we want to do something about it there, because other partners of the North Koreans in other parts of the world
Iran
are watching to see. Yeah, you got it right. This is the product of tonight. This may well be a coordinated effort between Iran and Korea, so that Korea would do the incidents there, and depending on how we're going to respond to Korea, Iran might surprise us with an incident elsewhere.
Not to sound silly, but I'm always reminded when I hear you make those connections that it is the Iranians, the Persians who invented the game of chess.
Yeah,
and
that's a global game of chess, my friend. Exactly.